Welcome to the deep dive. Before we even jump into the materials today, I just want to offer a sincere divine blessing for your day and for the entire week ahead.
Yeah, that is a beautiful way to start.
May you just have a week filled with clarity and purpose.
Absolutely.
So, our mission for today's deep dive is an exploration of Exodus chapter 11.
It is a heavy one.
It really is. We are focusing on the dramatic announcement of the 10th and final plague, the death of the firstborn.
Right, the turning point of the whole narrative.
Exactly. And just to give you an overview of our sources, we're pulling excerpts from two highly respected texts today, which are the Holman Study Bible and the NAA Study Bible.
Both are fantastic resources.
They really are. And our goal here is to examine the fascinating narrative shifts, the psychological details of the characters, and those really profound theological moments embedded in this ancient text.
Because there's so much beneath the surface.
There is. And for you listening, we're framing this not just as ancient history, but as a fascinating case study in leadership, in stubbornness, and in shifting power dynamics.
It is incredibly relevant.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start by looking at Moses himself, because the NAA commentary highlights a massive shift in his maturation as a leader.
Oh, it's night and day from where he started.
Right. Like early on, he was so reluctant, he was making excuses, stuttering, practically begging God to send someone else.
He really was. But now, he is acting boldly on God's promises.
Completely fearless.
And what's wild is that he's doing it even without knowing the exact timing.
Yeah.
Or the exact methods of how God is actually going to lead them out of Egypt. He doesn't have the full blueprint.
He's just stepping into authority based on a promise.
Exactly. And that internal shift creates an external one. According to the Holman commentary, Moses has essentially become very great in the land of Egypt.
Which is such a striking phrase.
Yeah.
Very great.
Right. And it's not just the Israelites who think so. It's the Egyptian people and even Pharaoh's own officials. They view Moses with immense respect.
Which you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the guy bringing plagues down on their country.
You'd think he'd be public enemy number one.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating here is that Moses wasn't shaping Egyptian opinions the way a king would.
He wasn't running a PR campaign.
No, not at all. The Egyptian people's views were totally unexpected, and they completely diverged from Pharaoh's stubbornness.
The people on the ground saw the truth.
Yes. They recognized God's power even when their own leader just completely refused to see it.
It's a massive failure of Pharaoh's propaganda. And that power shift leads right into this really intriguing instruction Moses gives.
The request for the silver and gold.
Yeah. He tells the Israelites to go and ask their Egyptian neighbors for objects of silver and gold.
It's a bold move.
It is. Out of context, it sounds almost like, I don't know, looting before you leave town.
It does sound strange on the surface, but the NAA source connects this to the much bigger picture.
Right.
It explains that this specific act is the direct fulfillment of the promise God made to Moses way back at the burning bush.
So it's not random at all.
No, it shows the narrative coming completely full circle. God told Moses they wouldn't leave empty-handed, and now we're seeing that happen in real time.
It's theological proof that the word Moses is acting on is reliable. The wealth transfer is just undeniable evidence of who really holds the power now.
Absolutely.
So that brings us to the details of the final plague itself, and the warning here is just terrifying.
The scope of the judgment is unlike anything else in the text.
It strikes every single level of Egyptian society. The text specifically says it goes from Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the maidservant who is behind the mill.
That phrase behind the mill is so important to understand.
Yeah, the Holman source breaks this down, right?
It does. It provides some vital historical context. The servant behind the mill refers to someone whose job was grinding grain between an upper and a lower stone.
Which sounds like incredibly grueling labor.
It's back-breaking work in the dust, and it represents the absolute lowest rung of ancient Egyptian society.
You literally can't get any lower on the social ladder.
Exactly. So by contrasting Pharaoh on his throne with the servant behind the mill, the text is showing that this plague spares no social class.
It penetrates the palace and the poorest dwelling equally.
Death is the great equalizer here.
That universal scope is just chilling. And it's followed by this prediction of a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt.
The sheer scale of that grief is hard to even imagine.
It is, But you brought up something from the Holman commentary earlier about this that blew my mind.
Oh, the poetic justice aspect?
Yes, explain that connection.
So the Holman commentary points out that this phrase, the great cry of the Egyptians, it directly corresponds to the cry of the oppressed Israelites that was mentioned way back in chapters 3.7 and 3.9.
That is incredible narrative symmetry.
It's a profound literary callback. The tears of the oppressors are finally mirroring the tears of the oppressed.
It's a moment of stark poetic justice. All that suffering Pharaoh inflicted is coming right back to his own doorstep.
It's sad.
And right in the middle of all that chaos, there's this weird, vivid detail. While Egypt is crying out, the text says that among the Israelites, not even a dog will move its tongue against them.
It's such a specific thing to note.
Right, not against man or beast, just total silence.
It symbolizes absolute peace for Israel.
It's this eerie, miraculous calm right next door to nationwide devastation.
And it illustrates the very clear distinction God is making between the Egyptians and the Israelites.
But we need to clarify why that distinction exists, because it's easy to misunderstand.
Yes, and the NAA source is really helpful here. It clarifies that this distinction, this favor they receive, isn't based on anything inherently superior about the Israelite nation.
They aren't just better people.
Not at all. We know they have plenty of flaws. The commentary explains that this piece is purely based on God's sovereign government.
Right.
It's based on his benignity and the specific covenant he made centuries earlier with Abraham.
So it's unmerited favor. It's about a promise-keeping God, not perfect behavior from the people.
Exactly. It keeps the focus on divine grace.
Okay, so let's shift gears and look at the psychology of the two main leaders in the room. There's a moment right after Moses delivers this warning to Pharaoh that is deeply human.
Moses gets angry.
He does. The text says he leaves Pharaoh's presence infuriated or in hot anger. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Because we don't usually see this.
Right. The Holman commentary points out that the text rarely tells us anything about Moses' personal feelings during the plagues.
He's usually very stoic, just delivering the message.
But here, the emotion boils over. Why is he so furious in this specific moment?
Well, we have to remember Moses is acting as the Lord's representative. His anger stems directly from Pharaoh's hardened heart.
Just the sheer, immovable stubbornness.
Yes, but adding nuance from the NAA source, interacting with Pharaoh's persistent, irritating pride would naturally enrage Moses.
Especially when Moses knows what's coming.
Exactly. Pharaoh's pride is having devastating effects on the Egyptian people. Moses had pleaded with him. He had given him every chance.
And Pharaoh just won't budge.
Yet Pharaoh's stubbornness remained immovable. He is willingly bringing this disaster on his own people just to save face.
Which would infuriate anyone with a conscience. Moses is watching a completely preventable tragedy unfold because of one man's ego.
And that leads to the incredible irony of how this encounter ends.
The role reversal.
Yes. The sources really highlight this. By the end of this ordeal, Moses is essentially in the position of Pharaoh.
Which is mind-blowing when you think about Egyptian hierarchy.
It totally upends it. Moses prophesies that Pharaoh's own servants, these elite officials, are going to bow down and kneel before Moses.
Literally begging him to leave.
Begging a former shepherd to leave their country, it shows that true authority is no longer on the throne. It rests with the man who has been speaking the truth.
What an astonishing power dynamic shift. So what does this all mean for you listening today? This chapter is clearly a masterclass in the dangers of pride. We see how a leader's hardened heart can bring destruction to everyone around them, all the way down to the person grinding grain behind the mill.
It's a tragic warning.
But it's also a powerful testament to the fulfillment of promises. It shows us that true authority doesn't always look like a crown. Sometimes it looks like stepping out in faith and speaking the truth, until reality just becomes undeniable.
It's a timeless lesson. And I want to leave the listener with a final, thought-provoking question to really mull over.
Let's hear it.
What happens to a society when a leader's pride completely blinds them to reality, even as their own citizens and officials clearly see the writing on the wall?
Wow.
Bringing it closer to home in our own lives, how often do we let our own hardened hearts force us to ignore the obvious truth right in front of us?
That is a phenomenal question to reflect on. We all have those areas of stubborn pride that we really need to check. Thank you so much for joining us today on this deep dive. We'll say goodbye for now, and remember, God bless all the listeners. See you next time.